taught me what you can get away with sheep. You don't quite need to do what I had done growing up. And so we learned a lot with them. And then we started with milk cows. This is Eleanor with her beloved Bruni and Bess, the foundation of the Jersey milk herd. I started with an Ayrshire Jersey influenced milk cow, my beloved Kierlick. And so we've had milk cows the whole time. Then we started with some pastured pork and loved them. We did a little breeding, but now we just buy feeder pigs. And then we have beef cow. And so the dairy influence, Kierlick was the foundation of the beef herd. I wanted high butter fat, I wanted small frame. And so putting pounds on that smaller dairy frame has been the goal of the beef herd breeding program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the beef side of the operation. Normally when I talk about adding species, adding diversity to farming and ranching operations, I hear this: I don't have time. I don't have time to add sheep to a beef herd. I don't have time to add chickens. I don't have time to add pork. I don't have time. And so the question becomes, then what are we busy doing that we don't have time for diversity? And so I found this on Instagram the other day, and it was a video. I didn't download the video, I just took a screenshot of it. But it says, if you don't have a crazy one, are you really a cattle rancher? And I shook my head. Like, oh, dear Lord, why? This is what I want out of my cow herd. I want a cow herd I can walk around, that I can be in amongst, that I don't have to keep one eye out for that one. I want cows that my kids can be around, that we can run machinery and equipment in through, and they're not going to freak out. And so the question becomes, I don't know, if you were in college, as my kids say, back in the 1900s, when I was in college, you had to ask the question of your friends, like, have you DTR'd? When you were dating someone, have you defined the relationship? And so define the relationship, the uncomfortable talk no one wants to have about their dating status. And I'll change that a little bit. It's the talk that no one wants to have about their livestock. Why do I have these critters? Why am I doing all this work? Where are my weak links? Where am I spending my time? Who am I spending my time on? That is the foundation of selection. Having those hard conversations, having those defining the relationship talks, maybe it's with yourself, maybe it's with your farming and ranching partners. What are we trying to do here? How are we spending our time? Is it how we want to spend our time? And so making selection criteria based on those goals. I'm going to start with our omnivores first. Omnivores are ones that eat a mixed diet. And so they don't eat strictly forage. They're going to need some sort of grain, protein type supplement. And so our omnivores, I'll start with our pigs. It's the one we do the least amount of selection in, simply because feeder pigs are hard to come by. And so we have a supplier of feeder pigs. Over the years that we've worked together, I give him a list. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I prefer. And then he does what he can to fulfill my needs and desires. And so with our feeder pigs, this is the list of things that we take into account. I would prefer that they be raised, birthed on dirt. We do better with dirt pigs than we do with confinement pigs. Now I've taken confinement pigs because, again, they're hard to find. We will generally lose at least one of those confinement pigs. So when I order from a confinement pig producer, I've got to up my order by at least one or two, because I know I'm going to lose them. They come and they get off the trailer and they even just walk like this. What is this squishy brown stuff? What is this green lush growth? And so they spend about a month, I refer to it as detoxing, getting some of that good bacteria and forage into their system and detoxing from the confinement type system. We prefer dark colored pigs because they don't sunburn. The light colored the white barrow you see right there, he's a blue butt, but he'll still sunburn. The spots will sunburn, and so we want more of that Burke influence, Hamp, Duroc, even Herefords are okay. Influence rather than the light colored, more of a Yorkshire type type pig. Water is your number one concern with pigs. They need fresh, clean water, and they also need water to cool down in. And so the biggest challenge with pigs is how do you get them to stop flipping the water. So we have a Hawkeye steel water that bolts onto a piece of plywood. When they're small enough, they don't have the mass to dip it over. It holds 100 gallons. And when they're big enough to tip it over, then they're standing on that plywood and they can't dump it. But that's their favorite thing in the world. They'll work all day long to figure out how to dump your water. So watering is the biggest challenge. Some guys like to use the nipple waters and put a hose on it. There's nothing a pig likes more than to bite that hose. They'll just chew your hose. So water is the biggest challenge, and then you do have to feed them. There are lots of pig feeders in tree rows. Just pull in and ask somebody, hey, are you using those? 20 bucks has gotten John Carlson a lot of pig feeders. And so you do need some sort of feeder. Those old style feeders work just fine. And so they're light. Once they're empty, you roll them to the next paddock and move on. And then chickens. So these are some Red Rangers. We move them in. So these are called Salatin style pens. Joel Salatin kind of pioneered them. And so we use these exclusively for our broilers. And so here we are moving on some pasture. There's a lot of talk between like Red Rangers and Cornish crosses, and we've tried them all. We've tried raising heavy layer roosters, and what we found is nothing grows faster or better than a Cornish cross. They just don't. Those Red Rangers will take 12 to 14 weeks. And what you end up doing is feeding them more on the heavy end. So you end up feeding a lot more feed through those last 4 to 6 weeks. Cornish cross broilers are 8 weeks. They're in and out. We have found a difference in high quality feed. Bagged feed just doesn't quite do it for us. So we use feed mix out of Harvey. It's feed mix, right, Casey? Out of Harvey, and we can go up and get totes full. And we just put them on some feed wagons on running gear and move them around the pasture where we need them. And we'll feed turkeys and chickens, broiler chickens, on that same mix, and they do really well. So we get our Cornish cross broilers out of Winemere. The Woodbury hatchery down there is a great broiler strain. So we're trying to get as local as we can, a high quality feed, a high quality broiler, and we can really turn them in 8 weeks. Some of the lower quality feeds, we were feeding up to 10. And again, you're feeding them those last 2 weeks when they're heavy and hot. So we wanted to get them quick and turn around. And then with turkeys, we did not raise turkeys last year. Turkeys have been a struggle. What we found the biggest success with is brooding them with chickens, because turkeys are dumb. And turkeys need teachers. And so the best luck is to brood them with not just Cornish cross broilers. That didn't work because the Cornish cross, they're so food driven that they would push the turkeys away from the feeders. And then the turkeys would go, well, I guess we just won't eat. So we breed or brood them with laying hen chicks. Laying hen chicks are very aggressive. They're good foragers, they're active, and so they teach the turkeys how to eat and drink and go under the brood lights, and they're good teachers. So we breed them with chicks. A lot of industry standards would tell you never to do that because of some sort of black something disease. I don't know. It's never happened. This is a broad-breasted white. That's the industry standard. That's your butterball type turkey. This is a broad-breasted bronze. We've tried some heritage breed turkeys. They just don't grow as fast. They don't get as big. They're not as good of an eating experience. The breasts are smaller, and so it doesn't look like the turkey people are used to. So they've been a harder sell to our customers. If we were in a more urban market that really appreciated a heritage breed turkey, I think we could do well with them. But it's just too different, particularly when they're naked in a bag, for our customers. They really wanted that plump, double-breasted appearance. And so we do better with broad-breasted bronzes than we do with the whites. The only difference is the dark feather pigment leaves a spot on the skin. So it kind of looks like you just shook pepper over the top of your turkey. You just tell your customers, that's just feather pigment, it's okay. Nothing wrong with your turkey. And then what I wanted to mention was the size difference in butchering them. You use the same basic equipment, but turkeys are just so much bigger. They're just harder to handle, they're bigger, they weigh more, everything's bigger in a turkey. Gizzards and hearts are bigger. And there is no public poultry processing in the state. So if you're gonna raise meat birds, you're gonna have to process them or know somebody who would help you with that. Turkeys just take more. They're just more. If you want a good tricep and like deltoid workout, butcher turkeys, because everything is big and heavy. So the market for turkeys is awesome. They're a specialty meat. It's kind of like selling prime rib. People really don't care what it costs, they want it. So everybody wants a turkey for their Thanksgiving table and they'll pay for it. So there's a good market for turkey. Laying hens, we used to sell a lot of eggs. Eggs was our gateway drug to the rest of our farm products. I don't anymore just because we don't run a buying club type situation anymore, and so we didn't need, nor did we have a regular outlet for the eggs. So what we're looking for in our laying hens is a larger bodied hen. Larger bodied hens, it's not as a big of a shock to their system when they lay an egg. An egg, like a 4-ounce egg, is like a percentage of her body weight. And so the larger bodied hens tend to do better, have more longevity in the flock. We want a good layer. I love nothing more than a pretty chicken, but she's also got to earn her keep. And so a chicken that lays 100 eggs a year may be really beautiful and cool and funky, but she's not paying her grain bill. So we want a good layer. The hybrid kind of race car layers, the leghorn type layers, they end up being too flighty. They end up to be kind of too high octane and they burn out a little faster. And so we're looking for a good foraging type hen, and we want a docile type breed more than an active breed. The worst chickens, Eleanor, right, are the prairie bluebells. What a ridiculous catastrophe. They were active, and I thought, oh, they'll be out there foraging and whatever. But you walk into the hoop house or you walk into the fence area where we have around our cluck wagon, and they would flush like pheasants. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? How am I supposed to manage a bird I can't even get within 20 feet of? So they laid these really cool blue eggs, and they were good layers of blue eggs, and they were active, and I thought, that's great. So when you're reading the poultry descriptions, beware of the word active, because docile and good foraging is what we want. Think like Buff Orpington, like those yellow, just happy hens. Oh, they're just lovely. I love them. They're docile, still a good forager. They're just a docile breed that you can walk amongst, and you're not flushing them like grouse. Now we've gotten into the geese game. This is my breeding pair of African geese. Why does Annie raise geese? Annie does not want a flock of geese. Annie wants like one goose. One goose for aerial predators in the chicken flock. And so they do really well at that. They sound the alarm. They'll take off after a predator. The bouts that we have had with a resident bald eagle, they have killed my goose first because the goose was protecting the rest of them. And so they're doing their job. So I wanted a goose that, geese are hard to find, particularly single geese. And so I wanted a goose that would work for flock protection, meaning they had to be a little bigger bodied, looked like something out in the pasture. And then I wanted something that was bossy versus aggressive. We've all had the stories, the horror stories of geese, right? Being chased by geese as a child. And I did not want a goose that hung around my yard and pooped everywhere. And so go out with the chickens where you belong, do your job, but don't be aggressive when I come in there. And so we've got these African geese. Geese are excellent foragers and converters of grass to meat. A goose can get 70% of their diet forage. And so they don't add a lot to the bottom line. They don't add a lot to the feed bill when they make up for it in protection. So they're hard. Geese are hard to find. Good geese are hard to find, and it's hard to find one or two at a time. And so now I breed geese and sell them at exotic animal sales, one or two at a time. I've also got a really good sideline business in selling started pullets. I'm good at brooding chicks. I've got an excellent brooder setup. And so I'll sell a couple hundred started pullets at exotic animal sales and private treaty. And I got a list of customers who get chickens from me every year. And so it works out really well to sell, to use that selection criteria, pick some different breeds, and then start them and sell them for other people. They're coming mid-March. I sell them the first 2 weeks of May. And so for about 6 to 8 weeks worth of work, it's a pretty tidy profit. And then we've had ducks a few times, and I was really struggling trying to find a laying duck that was also a good eater. There's good eating ducks that don't lay hardly at all, and then there's really good laying ducks that aren't worth butchering. So I wanted a good mix of those two. Again, you can't buy less than 15 ducks from a hatchery, and so it's harder for small farm types to get a hold of just a few ducks. And so I've started raising, these are silver apple yards. Silver apple yards. And they're a good quality eating duck. They're a larger body. They grow fairly quickly. They're a good layer. They're not going to lay like a golden 300, but they'll lay pretty consistently. They're also good foragers. They're out there looking for protein, bugs and stuff. And like I said, they're a good eating duck. They put some meat on the table. We tried some Swedish, blue Swedish. We tried some runner ducks. There's nothing to eat on a runner duck. It was not worth butchering. That one went for dog food because they weren't even worth eating. So that's kind of the selection criteria we're using on the ducks. Again, it's hard to find them. It's hard to find smaller quantities, and so I have an incubator. Have eggs will incubate, and sell them as small started ducks and geese. So that's our omnivores. And then the herbivores, we have had goats in the past a couple of times. Eleanor and I would like nothing more than to have a registered herd of Nubian milking goats. We would love it. John would like nothing less than to have a registered herd of milking Nubians, and so that's why we don't have them. So we run a FLIRD. If you Google FLIRD, our farm comes up, because I guess we're the ones who use that word. And so it's flock herd, we run them together. I used to say 365. There's one paddock that we don't run the sheep in right now, so technically they don't run every day of the year together, but it's most of the days. And so, our sheep and cows have run together since day one, simply because we didn't have a place to separate them, so there you are, you're together. And we haven't stopped. So what selection criteria are we looking for in the herbivores? And the herbivores are what we're breeding for. We really have a strict breeding program and culling program on them because we need them to work for us. And so this is a picture of the girls on their horses. That's Eleanor in the foreground on our AQHA mare Belle, and then that's Jana on her beloved AQHA gelding Shadowfax. And so the same criteria we would apply to horses, we're going to apply to our cows and sheep. And so when I was thinking about putting together this talk, I thought, well, would I keep a horse if they were doing these? And absolutely not. And so we have horses. They need to do some work for us. We don't have pasture puffs. Again, if that's your goal, if you just want to look out of your front window and see a horse in the pasture, that's great. But then define that relationship. That is the job of this horse, is to entertain me and provide a pleasurable viewing experience. Then define that relationship, then spell that out. And that's fine. If that's your goal, that's fine. I'm not here to judge your goals, but you need to define that. This is the role of this animal on our place. So for us, the horses that we have, these two and the others, they have to be sound. I'm not going to buy a horse that isn't sound. I don't think you would either, particularly in today's horse market. They're going to have to be sound. They're going to have to do the job that we ask them to do. They're going to have to be hardworking. The best thing about that gelding is his heart. There isn't anything he won't do if Jana asks him to. And so we want them to work hard and we want them to do the job that we need them to do. So the job for these horses is to gather, sort, pen, do ranch work. And so I could bring a thoroughbred home that was, won lots of money on a racetrack, but does it do the job I need it to do? Probably not. And so it's the same approach that we need to take with our other working animals, not just the horses, when we're looking at what we have and is it doing the job we need it to do. So some of you have probably heard of the 80-20 rule, and the 80-20 rule can be spread out on a lot of scenarios. But for our farm, the 80-20 rule applies to we spend 80% of our time on 20% of the problem. Like 20% of our animals are the problem, we spend 80% of our time there. And so identifying those animals, where are we spending our time? Who's always got her head in a bucket? Which ones are the ones crawling through the fence? Which ones are the ones I have to bring in and treat? Those are the questions we need to be asking and define that relationship and then get rid of those animals. We want a lot of animals that we don't know who they are. We want them to be out there quietly doing their business, making money. I don't want to know who they are. If you know who your animals are, I'm betting it's not for a good reason, right? That blankety blank, again. If you know who they are, they're probably not the ones that are making you money. So here's a picture. This is years ago, because we have a lot of Icelandics in that picture. We don't have quite so many anymore. This is years ago. At the time I took this picture, Facebook just reminded me of this. So this ewe was 10 years old at the time we took this picture. We called her Grandma for a reason. She was the oldest ewe in the flock. Generally, by industry standards, we should be culling ewes at 5 or 6 years old. I don't cull ewes until they start dropping off in production. So they have to be twinning, and if they start dropping to a single, or they're big, one side goes bad, or they're not raising both their lambs, out of the pool. So at 10 years old, Grandma's still in the flock, twinning every year, raising twins. She's not going anywhere. I only know her because she's the old one. Then the one behind her was a ewe lamb when this picture was taken, and she's the new old one. The red tags are probably our oldest. I have different colored ear tags every year. The red tags are probably the oldest class, still in our flock. She's the same way. She doesn't have a name because we have too many sheep now. But she's out there still, making money. I don't know who she is. She doesn't get in trouble. She doesn't need my help. She's just out there making money. So who are the 20% that we're spending 80% of our time on? And get rid of them. We stuck between, this fall, the girls and I worked the sheep and sorted the ewes off and culled hard and like we always do. And I called John and I said, we did it. Oh my gosh, we did it. And John's like, what? I said, we finally broke 100 ewes. We have been culling so hard for so many years. We were between 35 and 50 ewes forever. Forever. We finally broke 100 ewes. And now we're gonna run with it. I love it. So let's talk about cows first. So when we're selecting, these are the criteria that I'm gonna select on. Similar with horses, they have to be sound. If I've got to trim feet, if I got to mess with them, they're gone. I don't have time for it. A friend of ours came over to watch shearing one time, and she was like, so when are we going to trim feet? And I was like, oh. Well, other places that I've been on, and they've been shearing, then they pull them off the shearing floor, then they trim feet. And I was like, well, we don't do that. And she's like, oh, you trim another day? And I was like, I don't own a hoof trimmer. I don't want to touch their feet at all. Because if you have poor feet and all the walking our animals need to do, whether you're cow or sheep, if you have poor feet, that's a structural issue. That's a sure sign you're gone. So anybody who has a structural issue, feet and legs, out of the pool. They need to breed back on time and every year. Like, well, she had a really good calf 2 years ago, so we'll keep her. Nope. Breed back on time, every year. They have to be docile. Anytime that I walk into the cow herd and somebody even looks at me crosswise, she's on the list. I don't want to be scared of my animals. I don't want to be chased by either a rooster or a bull. Like, no. I want to be able to walk in, do my chores, do what I need to do, and not be worried for my physical safety. We just had a guy up at Turtle Lake who just got mauled by a cow. Like, well, she has a nice calf. It's not a nice calf if you had to spend a week in the hospital to see it. So get rid of them. Because I have 2 handy horses with handy girls, we get asked to help people work their cattle. And we went on to this neighbor's place, and they handed me a list. I end up running gates because I don't have a horse. They have the horses. So I end up running gates. And they handed me a list of cows I needed to watch and crawl the gate for. And I said, you know who they are? You know who they are and they're still here. Like, why? Why are we crawling gates for cows? If you have good livestock handling, if you've never taken a livestock handling class, low stress livestock handling, take one. And after you incorporate those techniques and you still have some that crawl the other side of the fence, bye-bye. We brought in some sheep years ago, and there were a handful of them that I would walk in our big corral. I would walk in the green gate and they would crawl the other side. Bye-bye. If I gotta watch your tail go over the next hill, I can't work with you. So we want docile cows, we're talking about cows. We want docile cows, they need to calve unassisted on pasture. If I have to touch that cow, she's gone. And in the 12 years we've been on this farm, I have pulled 1 calf and she was gone. And so I don't want to touch them. They need to calve unassisted. This is calving season for me. I walk out in the morning, oh, look who's here. And then I come out in the evening, oh, look who's here. Done. They need to maintain body condition. So we have 3 cow families. We have a Swedish herd, we have a British white herd, and we have a Longhorn herd. So I'm trying to bring in some genetics from all 3 of those different cow families and trying to do some things. There's nothing like better than working on genetics. And so right now we're working on maintaining body condition. So some of my Longhorn influence cows get thin, but they also can fatten on a fence post. And so I'm trying to work on those F1 and F2 generation heifers now. Can they gain weight but maintain that body condition and not lose it like some of my original Longhorns are struggling with? And then the selection criteria we're working on now, these are the 2 we're working on now. The first 4 we're pretty handy on. The next 2 are what we're working on right now. Now we're starting to look at cutability of those calves. So can we have a consistent calf product? We direct market all of our steers at this point. Do we have good cutability on those steers? Are we getting some consistency across those carcasses? Are we increasing hanging weights and saleable product? And so that's the selection criteria we're gonna use moving forward. Just a few pictures to kind of talk about what we're doing. These are some of Eleanor's milk cows. Our milk cows need to do the same thing as the beef cows. And Kierlick, my original, she got sick a few years ago and called our vet, and she came out and she's like, Annie, we don't have any dairies in McLean County. I don't know a whole lot of dairy stuff. And I said, Andrea, treat her like a beef cow, because that's what I do. She eats like a beef cow, she walks like a beef cow, just treat her like a beef cow. And so these cows, we dam raise our calves on the dairy cows. We pull them off at night and we'll milk once in the morning. And so they got a dam raise, they got to raise a calf. When I said I was gonna take this dairy cow 12 years ago and I'm gonna dam raise the calves, and I was told by many people, well, she'll never nurse a calf, that's been bred out. Oh no, she did fine. And then we don't wean. The cows will just kick them off. And well, she'll never wean a calf. You'll have to pull that calf. Well, she does. And so the dairy cows have to work just as hard as the beef cows. The selection criteria is the same on those girls. When we bring them into milk, we supplement with some alfalfa pellets just to give them that little boost of protein. Depending on where we're grazing, in our grazing system, we'll pull the dairy cows and graze them closer to the yard just because it's a long walk to bring in cows every day from the back paddocks. And so we'll use them for some management around the yard if we're grazing out far. But they need to raise those calves. This is the far paddock of which I was speaking, and so those cows need to walk quite a ways. They need to be functional, they need to be on the move. We want them to stay together as a herd. We don't want them to be strung out. And then they gotta raise a good calf. This is one of my favorite cows. She's the hard worker of the herd. This is Connell. And so she's really good at hiding calves. She's the #1 calf stasher. And so you just have to trust her. Like, it's somewhere. She's not gonna tell you where it is. But we want her to take good care of that calf. We also want them to raise a lot of meat in a short amount of time. This is Kierley. This is the original milk cow. She's Ayrshire. And then this is the bull calf on her. That's at 8 months old. At the 305 adjusted weaning weight for him, she was weaning over 100% of her body weight. And so that's the high butterfat influence. That's why I went with her as a maternal influence, is the high butterfat. And so we want those calves to gain a lot of weight. I don't want big calves at birth. I want small little feisty calves, but I want them to gain weight pretty quickly, and that comes from high butterfat. And so we want those cows to be small in frame, but heavy in muscle, and we want them to put on condition pretty quickly. And so one of the ways that we look, an indicator for condition, the girls came in just the other day from feeding, and they were like, "Mom, you know who has a fat tail head?" And so we're looking at tail head fat. I don't know if you guys do a lot of looking at tails. I do. And so you want to be able to pinch that fat. Pinch that tail head fat. That's good body condition, particularly this time of the year when they're going into for us, we're entering the last trimester for gestation. And so we want those cows fat. We want them to come in good body condition. It's been a nice winter this year, right? And so they haven't had to work quite as hard. And so John's held back on some feed, but we still want to have good body condition on those cows. We want them to hold it. Even if we have to feed some marginal type feeds or we have to go through some cold weather, we want some margin built into those cows. And then the sheep, so here's a cow in the midst of my sheep picture because you can't get away from them. So the sheep graze with the cows. We bale graze in the winter. They graze together in the summer. We can talk a lot, if you have questions on how to manage them together, we can talk about that too. But we have a lot of the same criteria for our sheep that we do for the cow herd. Sheep are a lot faster. My genetics have progressed twice as fast with sheep as they do with cows, because you just have that 2-year cycle with cows and a 1-year cycle with sheep. So you can move pretty quickly in your genetics one way or the other. Like I said, similar type selection criteria. They have to be sound. If a ewe comes in with long toenails, she's gone. And I really don't care what kind of lamb she had last time. I don't want those lambs in my flock. And so long toenails was our first selection criteria. And we had one this fall because she had injured her foot. And so that changed the way she was walking, and then when her toenails got long, she was culled anyway. But I really don't have that issue anymore. We've kind of removed that from the herd. They need to breed back on time. It's not too hard with sheep. With only a 5 months gestation compared to 9 months with cattle. You're not going to miss as many as we do with cattle. I want them to be docile. Again, I don't want those ones that are climbing the back fence when I walk in the front. And so I got to be able to walk through them. I do not want pets. I do not want bottle lamb. Ugh, I hate bottle lambs. But they got to be docile. You got to be able to walk in amongst them and be able to handle them. Here's the big one. So I grew up raising sheep and then a cattle backgrounding feedlot. That's my experience. And so I have jugged ewes for many years. I have spent 36 straight hours in lambing barns because you didn't dare leave because somebody needed help with something. And I always tell John, he did not grow up with livestock, you have no idea how good you have it. You have no idea how good you have it. And so our ewes are expected to lamb unassisted in open spaces. We've lambed in a 60-acre pasture. We've lambed in 13-acre paddocks. We've lambed in some open corrals. We're kind of changing our lambing management in the past couple of years. The ewes also need to maintain body condition. They can't get thin. We want them to maintain that body condition over the winter, again, on some less than ideal forages, some less than ideal weather. We don't have barn space for everybody, so they're out there roughing it with the cows. The next selection criteria, this is my next one. She needs to keep all her ear takes. Nothing I hate worse than, to use the John Wayne term, jingle bobs. I hate jingle bobs coming in with split ears. They rip their ear tags out. Here's my philosophy on that. I told John this fall. Our new selection criteria is I'm calling anybody who doesn't have an ear tag. And John's like, what? And I said, if she doesn't have an ear tag, her head's been somewhere it shouldn't have been. That's the bottom line. Then you're gone. If you don't have an ear tag, I'm calling you. Well, that seems a bit extreme, but I can see where you're going. That's what John said. So then, this was this fall when we were sorting through them. And then, Thanksgiving morning, we're leaving to go for Thanksgiving, and the Flirt was closer to the house, in the same paddock as we had the cluck wagon and the poultry fence. Now, there is nothing inside that poultry fence that they did not have outside that poultry fence. So we are driving out of the driveway to go to Thanksgiving, and I said, stop the car. John's like, what? And I said, there's a ewe lamb stuck in that fence. So she had twisted and turned herself and wrapped the poultry fence around her head and ripped her ear tag out, blood everywhere because it ripped her ear, and she like strangled herself in the fence. She was fine. We untangled her and she ran away. But I said to him, she doesn't have an ear tag. She's going to get called. This is why. This idiot right here. So this is Annie's new selection criteria. If you keep your ear tag, you can stay. I also call anybody who didn't raise lamb, and I don't care why. If you can't fight off a coyote, if you can't keep your lamb with you, I don't care. If you come in dry, generally we shear and sort and whatever later in the season. If she comes in dry, I really don't care what the reason is. She's gone. You got to be able to have lambs, raise lambs, wean lambs. And so I'll call anybody who's dry. They go on the list. And then now, like I said, we're changing our lambing management just a little bit. We used to lamb just wide open on pasture, and I kind of had the Cody Sand approach where I really don't care, and I'll just tag them when they come in. But then I went down to visit Pete and Keith Kronberg's operation a couple of years ago, and Pete just has all this wonderful information on his sheep. And I was like, oh, imagine the selection I could do if I had all of Pete's information. But I can't because I don't take my lambs right away. So I don't know who their mom is, and I don't know who they're twins, and I don't have all this information. And so I came home and I said to John, I'm not saying we have to do it like Pete and Keith do it, but I'm saying I would like access to the information. So the past couple of years, my challenge has been, like, how do I get a chunk of that information without jugging? And Pete and Keith have lambing jugs for just a few days. And I really don't want to jug them. So how can I get this information? Because I'm already lambing on pasture. I don't need to jug. So how can I get this information without having to jug them? So I'm working on that. Because my next selection criteria after, does she keep her ear tag, is she raising 2 lambs? I will breed yearlings. I breed for a yearling lambing, so they'll lamb at 1. I don't expect twins out of those yearlings. I'd like them to just have 1 and raise it well. Here's your practice lamb. But after yearlings, I want them to twin. The first lamb pays the bills, the second lamb makes the money. So I want 2 lambs. I will pull triplets. I don't flush ewes. A lot of people will flush. I don't want triplets. Heaven forbid quads. I only want 2 lambs on that ewe. I figure ewes have 2 teats for a reason. I only want 2 lambs. So I'll pull triplets. I'll pull either the smallest one or I will pull the male. I will not keep a female bottle lamb. She's tagged as a wether and is sold. I absolutely do not want those. And there's I could launch into a whole reason why. If you want to know, ask me a question. So just some shots of our sheep. This is the shot you saw before. This is the foundation of our genetics, are these Icelandic ewes. But we realized that we were taking a 60% hit at the sales barn on our wethers just because they looked weird. They still tasted great, but they looked weird. So we started with some Rambouillet ram. This is the son of that Rambouillet ram. We started with this Rambouillet ram crossing on those Icelandic ewes, and I was fairly convinced he would kill them because those Icelandics are little, and that Rambouillet was so big. And he didn't. And so we got the Rambouillet influence, and then we bought some Targhee ewes in. And so we've got Rambouillet Targhee mix. This is most of our ewe herd. And then we brought in North Country Cheviot buck a couple of years ago to kind of just pull apart. That Rambouillet was getting a little narrow for us. So we brought in the North Country Cheviots, which are like cement blocks on sticks. So we pulled that apart. And then I bought a Shropshire buck from Pete and Keith last fall to really add some muscle. And so, like I said, I could talk genetics all day. My projects. And so this is a shot of them. This is a 13-acre paddock. And so that's a couple of moms with twins. This is her 2 lambs, and she's got one here, and then there's one out of the frame. But they need to have twins, they need to have them on pasture, and I don't want to touch them. So anytime I have to lay a hand on a ewe during lambing season, she gets written down and she's gone. I was pulling lambs from the time I was in school. My dad was a big German from Russia. He had big, huge hands, so he couldn't get into a ewe, but I had smaller hands, and so there were many times I got picked up from school early because there was a ewe that needed help. And I would go home and I'd help Dad pull her lambs, and then the next year I'd pull her daughter's lambs, and it was this vicious cycle of keeping these unfit females. And so they got a lamb by themselves. Again, I want to walk out and go, oh, look, there they are. That's the extent of lambing. This is our corral type system, what we're working to now, so I know who the mom is and I can get my hands on and tag that lamb. You've got just a few hours from the time a lamb is born that you can catch it. And then good luck, you're not going to catch them. And so that was my struggle. Like I couldn't tag them and identify them. So we moved into a corral type lambing system, or we're moving through some corral systems. Again, the gift of having a former feedlot is that I have a corral system. The goal of our breeding program is the crop of yearlings right here. Jana's complaint about the ewe lambs a few years ago is, Mom, they all look the same. Yes, they do. Because that's what we've been breeding for. So we sell meat, we sell muscle. I haven't been breeding for wool. That may be down the line where I start breeding back for some wool quality. But that hasn't been a priority in our breeding program as of yet. We've been breeding for muscle, size, and dimension. Also keeping a moderate frame on them, and that they're efficient on forage. Not the current sheep extension specialist, but a former one, told me to my face that you cannot finish lambs on pasture. And I was like, well, the juice that runs down my chin when I eat my lamb chops would beg to differ on that. So I want sheep that'll finish on forage. I want them to grow quickly, have some high butter fat, and good endocrine type system. And then when we get them out on forage that looks like this, they can really go to town. We love grazing the sheep and the beef together because they graze very differently. There's sheep mouth and there's cow mouth, right, Eleanor? I was teaching the kids to weed the garden, those are the terms that we used. If you're going to cow mouth something, you're just going to grab it and rip, right? Between the rows of carrots, you're going to just rip that stuff out. But if you're working in the row of carrot, then you have to sheep mouth it. And you have to pick and choose and stuff like this. And so that's why we like running them together. Our optimum ratio is 10 ewes to 1 cow is what we'd like to see. So we're a little shy on our ewe numbers because we've been culling so hard, and so now I'm culling the cow herd because we don't have quite as many as we need for sheep. So we're going to try and keep that balance of 10 to 1 as we increase both the sheep and cow herds. But this is just a shot of Jana with a bottle lamb. I can't stand them. I don't want them. I try my best not to have any, but if I do, I raise them on a bucket type system. That just gives the shepherd, time to go to town and do other things than go out and feed lambs every 3 and 4 hours. And so it works really well. Again, if you've got specific questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. But I don't want bottle lambs, ever. People ask me that all the time. Do you have sheep so your kids can have bottle lambs? God, no. I hate bottle lambs. They just don't. If that's the way you start in the sheep business, then that's the way you start. We all got to start somewhere. But bottle lambs should never be our goal. They just don't work well. All right, that was fast and furious. I got Trish and Jay in here to keep me in line.
I'm not even watching my clock, so.
What's your Oh my God, it's 9:34, I'm over. Questions? I'm happy to stay and answer questions. Yes?
Have you ever crafted a lamb to like another, like one that has a single?
Not really, because they're out. They're out in the pasture. I did it back in the day when I raised sheep very differently. I've done it then. It's just a lot harder when they're out on 13 to 60 acres. And again, if I'm selecting right, they should be having twins, and there's no room.
What type of ratio? You said you raised the turkeys with the layers, and I totally get that because I know turkeys are not the brightest.
Oh, yeah.
What type of ratio? Do you have that about half and half?
3 to 1.
3 to
3 chicken teachers for 1 turkey student
Okay.
is
The
optimal.
good trainability.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Engine.
Yes.
You're running the sheep with the cows, what kind of fence you use that?
So we have a 5-wire, I don't even have a shot of it there. We have 5-wire high tensile, 1 ground, and it's the second one from the top. And then the bottom 3 wires are a little closer together, and then the top wire is a little higher. And so horses, cows, sheep all run in that 5-wire. And then we'll break it down into smaller paddocks we've used sheep fence or poultry fence. That gets to be heavy, and the cows don't need it.
Yeah, the cross fence doesn't really matter, it's perimeter fence that they're
Yeah.
not wandering.
So we're doing 5-wire high tensile. Again, I'm selecting for anybody who goes out of that fence. And so we had a sheep family that was notorious for fence crawling. And the kids would come in and report, so-and-so's out of the fence again, out of the pool. And so the cross fence will run, and they'll stay in the cross fence too. We'll start when the lambs are smaller with 3 wires and just poly reel, run 3 wires across. And in a few weeks, then we're down to 2. And that keeps calves and lambs on that side. So the perimeter is the 5-wire.
And that's hot?
Yeah.
Or the high tempo?
4 hots, 1 ground.
How's that work in the wintertime with snow if you're winter grazing?
We will run the perimeter hot, but we don't run our interior lanes, because we also have 5-wire interior lanes too. We don't run them in the winter. Now, in the wintertime, they have no need to leave the fence. The feed is on this side. And so again, if they're sticking their heads through, they're gone. I don't have time to chase cattle or
Well,
sheep.
the question in the winter, I guess, comes from the snow, and it's always repairs.
Right.
Always repairs, so, have you ever done anything with woven? Because, I have good fence. Now, does a guy take the bottom barb off and go with a short woven, or do you incorporate like you did there?
What we have talked about doing is running woven on the bottom and 2 hots on top. Then we can pull off the hot to run the paddock cross fences, but we've got the woven on the bottom. We have talked about it, and that's probably the next thing we're gonna do. So yeah, you're
Because what
not
I
off,
was looking
you're
at
not
is
off track.
taking out my bottom wire and leaving, I would still just keep my 2 barb on the top and then run woven on the bottom, and I'd be curious to see if, after the 3rd year, has the snow just smashed everything to the ground, or is it capable now?
Yeah, our biggest thing is heavy snow is insulators. Right, Eleanor? Go ride the horse, put insulators back on. It's a favorite springtime chore.
Find them laying
Her
everywhere.
face, it's not a favorite springtime chore. Other questions? Yeah,
When are you lambing out on pasture?
May, we're May 7th. So I'm lambing and calving in May.
How's the rain?
It's usually warm, and they can handle warm rain. And those lambs are born, they're sticky with lanolin, that rain will just run right off. It's the cold rains that get to be kind of an issue, but then our ewes still have wool on. Generally our shearer doesn't. I would like him to shear before lambing, but you get him when you get him. And so our ewes are generally wooled when they're lambing, and those lambs will tuck right up underneath. And again, if they don't, they're gone. Like they'll die, so they kind of have to learn. Other questions? Yes?
Is anybody raising hair sheep, or have you raised hair sheep?
Lots of people are raising hair sheep. The problem with hair sheep is marketability. We're getting enough hair sheep numbers now that they're hard to get rid of. A lot of the feedlots don't want them, and I don't know why. They want the woolies, and I don't agree, but I'm not a feedlot owner anymore. So, lots of hair sheep. The market is what's stymieing it. It's been hit or miss.
So they're marketing, they're not direct marketing.
Some of them are,
Some of them-
and then, you know, that works for a ways. We direct market lamb too, but the average American eats 0.74 pounds of lamb per year. So you're not gonna sell all of it, which is why we got out of the Icelandics. If I could sell Icelandic, I'd raise Icelandics. I love them. Hardy, just tough as nails, but I can't sell them.
How about the hides? Some people that say that they love the hide.
Well, I got a real good outlet for hides sitting right there. I keep the colorful ones for Casey. It's a lot of outlay on the producer's end first, then try to recoup that at the other end. It's just a lot of money. But yeah, there's market. Our Icelandic hides are awesome. Other questions?
What are you doing for mineral for when your cows and sheep are together?
They get the same mineral. It's a big lie that sheep can't have copper. They should have copper.
They die from copper. I've treated sheep that die.
Right, there's copper toxicity, but they need some.
They need mineral.
And so we feed the same mineral to the cows, sheep, horses. They all get the salt separately and then mineral separately. And so what are we feeding right now? It is, previously it was a stock cow mix from, they used to be Grass Farmer Supply. What are they now? And now I think they've added the sheep mix with copper, so I think we've switched to their sheep mix. But we were feeding their range cow mix.
Because the sheep mineral is usually 5 parts per million on copper, and cow should be considerably higher.
Right, and I'll feed more. I feed more than recommended for sheep. We also don't worm. My cows, or sheep, all of them. I've never had a wormer. I don't vaccinate. Like, there's a way to go. So our mineral program is really important. That's the one thing we don't skimp on. I will pay whatever it costs for that mineral. We feed salt, Redmond salt, separately. I was just consulting with somebody, as my job is mentor, I was just consulting with somebody who was losing goat kids. And so I said, this is systemic, like this is not just one bad doe or just a bad scenario, like this is across different animals. So I said, what's your mineral program? And so she told me, and I said, are you feeding salt separate from mineral, or is it an all-in-one? Well, it's an all-in-one. And so the trouble with all-in-ones is that they'll limit their intake based on the salt, not what they need of the other minerals. And so that's why we feed separate. And then if you really want to go crazy, split out all your different mineral components and then let them free choice those, and they'll medicate what they need. We haven't got that far yet, but yeah, I feed more copper than what anybody in North America will tell you to do. But the Australians and the New Zealanders will tell you to feed more copper. So far so good. That's all I can say.
Well, I hate to cut it off, but we gotta get rolling on to the next round. So thank you so much, Annie. I greatly appreciate it.